In the following podcast, there will be discussions and mentions of suicide. We understand that this topic may be sensitive and evoke strong emotional reactions. We encourage you to exercise self-care and listen at your own discretion. If you feel uncomfortable or distressed, please consider pausing or skipping this particular episode. Your well-being is important to us.
Hey, Polly.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good.
We've got another great podcast today.
All right, who we got?
We have Jeffrey Wolfsberg from the state. He's the state program director from Recovery Friendly Workplace, Rhode Island.
Oh.
So I know here we are recovery friendly.
Right, we got a policy.
Right. So we got our policies. I'm gonna see if we're up to snuff on this.
All right.
See if we are,
of course, we are
where we need to be. So I'm hoping, we could just drop that and he'd be like, oh, you guys are all good.
Right. You guys do the podcast without me.
You set the example for all of us to follow. So, I'm hoping that's what's going to come out of this.
I'm guessing we're going to. I feel like we think we know everything and then we don't.
So we will soon find out.
But we can always admit to it.
That's right. That's right. That's what this platform is for. All right. So without further ado, today, joining us on Totally Preventable, we have Jeffrey Wolfsberg, the State Program Director of Recovery Friendly Workspace at BHDDH. Jeffrey, how are you doing today?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm well.
Right.
Good morning. Thanks for being here.
To start off our podcast like we normally do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. I've spent almost my entire career working in the addiction mental health field. In my early 20s, I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker because I saw the movie Wall Street, and I was like, oh, I want to wear suspenders and make a lot of money and be Gordon Gekko. My whole family went into finance, but I was just drawn to, for personal reasons. I'm a person with lived experience with addiction and mental health, so perhaps that kind of led me down that path. But I was also just drawn to the helping people. I think almost everybody that I meet that's in this field, that's there's many reasons why we go into do what we do, but almost everybody shares a common feeling or value, if you will, of wanting to help people. So that's kind of where I ended up. I started working as a counselor's aide in a drug treatment center, just changing beds and welcoming people into the treatment center so they felt comfortable, and went on to become a licensed substance abuse counselor. And then about 15 years ago, I started working in leadership and held several different roles, the vice president of peer support. And now, fortunately, wearing two hats here at BHDDH, which is one is I oversee all the recovery housing in the state. So I'm the program liaison for recovery housing, which I equally enjoy. And I'm also the program director for Recovery Friendly Workplaces, which is something a little bit new, which I appreciate the forum today to talk about it.
That's awesome.
Can you tell us what inspired the Recovery Friendly Workspace?
Yeah, it's workplace.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. The genesis of it is actually in New Hampshire. I think Governor Sununu is the one that got it going, and I believe, if I'm remembering history, he has a personal, as many people do, relationship with, I think, relatives or people he cares about with substance use or mental health. And he felt like the workplace was an underutilized or overlooked potential for intervention, and started thinking about how do we make the workplace, more welcoming to people that are in recovery. When you think about, as we go into this topic more, you'll see how so many things really overlap on what I'm doing. Like, for instance, this push over the last 5 years or so with DEI. I'll simplify that and just say inclusion, making the workplace a more inclusive place. That certainly falls in line with Recovery Friendly Workplace, because we're trying to make it more inclusive for people that are in recovery or people seeking recovery from substance use disorders or mental health, even trauma. So that fits in nicely with that. And then we just want the workplace, post-COVID. I don't think we really, I've listened to so many podcasts and read a lot of books and talked to a lot of people about what this post-COVID environment is, and no one can really agree on what it is and isn't, but we all agree that we're not the same anymore. Like something dramatically shifted in our culture. And I could, I could certainly put my finger on a couple of things. I think people look at work differently. I think people are expecting different things from the workplace after going through that, national trauma of COVID, the in and out of work, and work became potentially a place where you went to and could die. That's how it was. So I think people are looking to go to work at a place that genuinely cares for them. And recovery friendly workplace is not just a social optics thing. I've sat down with business owners and I'm like explaining what the program is, and they're like, "Oh, I get it. This is one of those, feel good, do good." It's really not. It's both state and federal. So this is happening on a federal level as well. This is happening globally and nationally. This recovery ready workplace, they call it on a national level. We're calling it recovery friendly on the state level. But it's thinking about the workplace and asking ourselves, when we adopt certain principles to make the workplace more connected, more psychologically safe, then we see there's a lower incidences of absenteeism. We're retaining employees at a higher rate than workplaces that aren't practicing these principles, because people realize they're being cared for as total people. Less injuries and accidents if you're working in like manufacturing or construction, which I work with a lot here in Rhode Island. Better morale, productivity, communication between supervisors and supervisees. One of the common things I see when I walk into a workplace is, you stop an employee in the hallway. If you're doing like an informal kind of assessment, you just stop the employee and ask them, "Hey, if you were really struggling with a mental health issue or a substance use issue, do you feel comfortable going to your supervisor and talking to them about it?" And most people say no, because we are still dealing with a lot of stigma. What will happen if I tell him? Will they see me, look at me differently? Will I not be eligible for promotion because they don't think I'm reliable? All these things come up, which is what Recovery from the Workplace is addressing. I guess I come from a sales and marketing background. My whole family works in sales and marketing and runs businesses. And there's always this thing called the elevator speech, which is, if you got on an elevator and you had 30 seconds to tell someone what you do, can you do it? You should be able to do it.
Right.
So my elevator speech is, I'm trying to normalize the conversation in the office about mental health, substance use, and trauma. So people just aren't afraid of it anymore.
Wow. Now, what are some of the common misconceptions about individuals in recovery that you aim to address?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think the one that comes right off the bat is unreliability. That if you hire someone in recovery, hey, you don't know, man. You never know when they're going to show up. And actually, the data just proves just the opposite. That people in recovery make outstanding employees, and they miss fewer work days a year than people not in recovery.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think we need to get some people in recovery.
Yeah, because I can see that happen because as a person in recovery myself, I'm pretty, I've gone totally 180, which is I take care of myself in a very disciplined way. I'm fit. I exercise every day. I eat well, so I don't get sick that often. I don't miss work that often. And I think so that's hiring someone in recovery. If you have someone that needs to get into recovery and you help them using the practices that we help you set up at Recovery Friendly Workplace, then you also got a pretty loyal employee. I always tell us a story that I was up in Smithfield about last year, and I was working with a manufacturing company, and the CEO and I were having coffee, and she said, "I have to take a meeting, only 10 minutes, I'll come right back. But won't you go down to the manufacturing floor and walk around and talk to people?" Great. So I'm down there, and this guy asked me, "Hey, what do you do?" And I told him why I was there. And he goes, "Oh, well, that's interesting, because 5 years ago, I really had a bad alcohol problem. And the owner of this company really helped me. They didn't fire me. I came to work drunk one day, and they didn't fire me. They got me into treatment. They kept my job for like 60 days until I was able to come back. And I was like, that's great. And then he looked at me right in the eye and goes, I will never leave here.
Wow.
And it wasn't like that, like creepy vibe what I got was a real sense of gratitude that and loyalty that was inspired by this action. So I think when you ask, what's good about Recovery Friendly Workplace, why should employers be calling me after they see this podcast? It's because, you got to get a set of principles and practices that allow the office and the business to function more effectively, which means, more profits. But it also is going to give you a group of employees who feel safe and feel connected to each other, and that's good too.
That's great.
Like long term, I can see how it's better and you can balance it, but short term, how do you balance the needs of the individual that needs the recovery support and the operations of the business?
Yeah, I think that's that's a really good question. Like the last job I had, I ran the peer support team for a big agency up in Massachusetts. So I had a team of 80.
Mm-hmm.
It's very big change for me now. I have a small team here. But a large team was very challenging. All of them, by the way, had lived experience as a peer support team. I think it was the largest team on the East Coast. And you did have to make difficult decisions regarding, I guess what I'm trying to say is when I do keynote speeches or do workshops, there's sometimes an impression because I'm so employee friendly that, I just think employers should just give employees endless chances.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel that way, actually. At my last employee, I had to terminate a lot of people. So, what I am trying to do is I'm trying to help employers explore a process that works for them currently where they're at. Every employer is different. I walk into employers with 5 employees. I walk into some with 500. I walk in, some have sophisticated HR departments, and some, like, the owner is the HR, is the owner, is the marketing, they're everything. So the first thing you have to consider is what's the capacity of the business that you're sitting in. What can and can't they do, and then you have to structure recovery friendly workplace principles around that level of readiness. So, it depends. All I'm trying to do is help businesses respond more compassionately and more confidently. So when I did a training last week with 10 supervisors at this nonprofit. And really what we're trying to do there was, they're all very confident people, but just boost their confidence. That's all. That if they did see an employee that was struggling, they tried to fix all the performance related issues, but nothing was getting better. Let's have that difficult conversation that starts with, are you okay? Like, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but beyond just your performance, can you help me understand what's happening? Now, that's where the road ends, right? Because the employee has to participate in this healing.
Right.
If they don't, then we do have an obligation as managers and leaders to perhaps help them find another job, or help them move on, because our priority is work. So even at the last employer I was at, where we were doing peer support, which is very spiritual connected work, I just could not have one of my people showing up drunk or having in a psychotic place, or that wasn't going to work. So yeah, I did have to let people go, but I did so in a way in which most of the time when I terminated them, they're like, thank you. I know you did everything you could to help, so that's what I call a good termination.
Now, is it hard to get in the door with many of these companies? And when you are in, what kind of training and resources do you offer to help them become more recovery safe?
It's hard to get in the door. That's another great question. I thought it was going to be hard, honestly, but it's not. This is in some ways, this is not a lay, I don't want to say a layup, but I want my boss to know that I'm working hard. This is really the most difficult thing I ever done in my life. People are always yelling at me and closing doors. I've met one employer, and I've seen hundreds at this point. I think I've met one employee who said, this is not for us. Or he was even more stigmatized. He said, I'm not turning my business into a mental health clinic. I was like, oh, that's fine. I don't argue with people like that. Like, I get it. You have your right to your opinion. But almost everybody I've sat down with, once I get my 10 to 15 minutes to explain what I do, are all like, yeah, that makes total sense. What do we do? Now, there's different degrees of participation, again, based on the workplace's readiness. Some people are diving in, some people are just taking little bites, and we're moving them along. Yeah, I think there's no argument that mental health, substance use, and trauma, and I've even added caregiving for a loved one when I do trainings. Although it's not the mandate of this initiative, Recovery Friendly Workplace, I've added it because I feel like there's so many people like me out there. I'm 58 years old. I spent the last 5 years taking care of my mother, who passed away a month ago. But she needed my help every day, and I started my day very early. I ended it very late because it's centered around taking care of her needs, because I didn't want to see her go into an assisted living facility. Nothing against those, but I knew once she entered that place, her connection with her children would be much more challenging. So every day she saw me 10 times a day, because I put her in the apartment next to mine. But that really has cost me a lot, in my 5 years, stress and vacation, a certain amount of difficulty in my life. So I do reach out to those people when I'm doing a training, because I always find a couple on the room. So I think you asked about training, right?
Yeah. Once you're in the door, what type of
once we're in the door, I always to become a certified Recovery Friendly Workplace member, I make sure that there's one training that everybody has. I mandate it, which is Narcan training. So we want to overdose prevention and reversal is a big priority in Rhode Island, as it should be. Last year, I think the year before, we had 437 deaths from overdose. Last year, we had 404. If I'm off by a couple of numbers, don't email me yelling at me. But that's a lot, What I found really interesting about those numbers is like 69% of them were men. And we are still, not structuring our healthcare system around gender responsive care. And, I know we are addressing different groups such as LGBTQ+, but not enough people, not nearly enough people are seeing men as their own unique cohort that need to have a specific approach. So when I'm out giving speeches, part of every speech is my passion for helping people understand men's mental health more clearly. So Narcan's part of it. So supplies, how to use it, how to save a life. Then from there, there's a menu you can choose. Most people select the Recovery Ally training, which is something that I do, but it's a branded name from RICARE. They have a workshop, and it's a nice basic, 60 to 90 minute interactive workshop to help people understand, how does substance use impact the workplace, mental health trauma, understanding the nature of the illnesses and struggles, understanding language, like words. Like when I'm in the construction industry, really helping supervisors understand they can't walk around the job site, saying things like, oh, that guy's, bad shit crazy or whatever, or that, that guy's just a junkie, he's a dope fiend. And, language like that closes the door on anybody approaching that supervisor to ask for help, because that language is so abrasive. It sends a message about how he feels about people like that. So we do talk about language in that workshop. I think it's a good one for just everybody. Then there is the what I've titled "Are You Okay?" workshop, which is for supervisors and managers to help them understand and role play out difficult conversations with employees that hopefully open the door towards getting help. So we have other ones too, but Narcan, Recovery Ally, Are You Okay seem to be the three ones that I do the most. And I love it. I did one last week for Garden. I'm getting my calendar. Garden Time. It's a small little nonprofit that do composting, tree planting, really cool stuff. And there was such a wonderful, like 20 people just sitting down talking about this one topic.
Awesome.
I have a bunch of questions now. Go ahead. Step
Okay,
back.
go for it. Go for it.
Fire away. I'm having fun.
So do you have any supports for supervisors and like directors that need help with substance abuse or recovery or mental health? What happens in that case?
Be themselves.
Yes.
Are you thinking that like who's watching the supervisors and managers, or watching the employees and helping them, and who's helping leadership?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that should be their, that should be everybody. I mean, the CEO should be, or the VP or somebody else should be watching supervisors and managers. I mean, everybody needs to be taken care of by somebody.
Right.
Maybe it's more challenging if you're like many businesses in Rhode Island, you're the owner and you get maybe 12 employees, so no one's watching for you.
Right.
That before. That's more challenging. But we have some great services like BH Link here in Rhode Island. You love BH Link, you can get access to care right away, so I think those are resources. Yeah, we make sure that when we leave the business, once the business gets certified with us, it's not over. The relationship isn't over. We move into more of a case management relationship after that, where, we're checking in once a month. Do you want some more training? Do you need Narcan? How are your employees doing? Have any of your supervisors and managers had any difficult conversations they would like to kind of debrief with us? I've gone back to a lot of our members and sat down with managers and supervisors who said, oh, okay, I want to talk about this employee. I want to talk about this employee. Last month, I met with an employee. We had this conversation. It just blew up. It went south. What did I do wrong? So it's, and so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of reinforcing of the training and continuous training. But there's also, I can think of a paving company that we worked with, called us 3 months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, that they had a really good employee that's been there 25 years with an alcohol problem and needed to get them into treatment. They wanted to keep him. So we did get him into treatment right away. I talked to this person on the phone that night. He was willing to go to treatment to keep his job. We got him into treatment. The last time I checked, which was last week, he's back at work, sober and doing great. So
Thriving.
yeah. So we expect that there may be some bumps in that road. So I also HR set up, return to work agreements. What does that look like? What does the ABC plan look like if he relapses? We call return to use now, or reoccurrence. We're not actually using the word relapse that much anymore. But I help employers map out a plan. If they are going to intervene on an employee, send them off to treatment and have them return. So there needs to be a plan in place, and I help with that.
That's excellent. So we have a recovery friendly policy. I didn't realize we could be certified, which seems to answer a lot of questions, because going through the policy in my mind, I'm like, wow, how I would have a lot of questions if we needed to help somebody, like a lot of questions. I can't even come up with some. So if we are certified, we then have you as our.
Yeah, have me come back out. We'll sit down and we'll look at the policy and I can play devil's advocate and tell you, like, okay, here's where I see problems,
Yep.
But the simplest place to start is, start with maybe an employee survey, anonymous. You can set it up in SurveyMonkey. I got some great questions I could give you to put into the survey, but they are simple questions, such as, do you clearly understand your healthcare benefit if you need mental health or substance use services? Yes or no?
No, I don't understand anything about my healthcare benefits.
So
When you hear
if you're struggling, then you need to know that information.
Right.
You don't need to be, HR just needs to be revisiting it once a quarter, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, here's another question. Do you feel like your supervisor has communicated to you clearly and openly that they are open to a conversation about mental health, substance use, trauma if you needed to have it. So oh yeah, I think I think my employees would say, yes, I could absolutely go to Jeff with anything.
Yeah.
The business problem with my life, Jeff has made it very clear he's open to that conversation. And the reason why they know it's clear, because I've told them, very simple. In supervision, I go, work is work. But if you're struggling with a mental health issue, I want to talk about that too. So I think supervisors and managers need to be transparent about that. But that's another survey question for employees. Do you know where to get help if you just wanted to do it on your own? Like you didn't want to involve anybody at work, but you were looking for help. The alcohol, drug problem, mental health problem, do you know where to go? No. Okay, then we need to do a better job making resources available to our employees.
Yeah.
They don't know where to go. So it doesn't have to be exhaustive. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 questions.
Mhm.
That gives you your direction.
Are people generally amazed? Like, for instance, if they tell you to come on in, look at their policy, and they think it's ironclad, they think it's right to the point, and then you point out gaps. Do you come across that often?
There's a word for it. It's called a leadership optimism bubble.
Oh, okay.
Bob. It is, and I suffered from it at my last job because in a higher level of leadership, you think more optimistically about these things than your employees. Like, oh, they know what's going on, or they know where to get help, and no one knows what the hell's going on.
Wow.
Because that. So yeah, you have to be careful of that. So yeah, so I think sometimes can't remember your question, but I know it led me down that road. What was the question?
Do they know? You may go into an organization and they think they're recovery.
Oh yeah. Actually, to be fair, they're all over the place. Some are like, we're a mess, please help us.
Right.
Some are like, I think we're doing pretty good, but come on in anyway. So it depends. I have found the ones with HR departments tend to be a little bit more optimistic because they can be, because they do have people devoted to that. The ones that are just kind of like the 10 to 50 employee ones are the ones that are most thankful for us, because they don't really have a formal HR department. They're really, we're kind of that. We're like an EAP, if you will, in some ways, without all the dressing of an EAP. But they're really thankful for our help. That paving company, they're like our biggest fan. They're like, you guys help us dodge a huge bullet. We love that employee. We just had no idea what to do, and you guys just boom, 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 done.
Awesome. That is great.
All this stuff is totally preventable. You know what I mean? It's just, you don't have to, stress about it. It's a totally preventable problem.
Now, how can employers create a supportive culture?
I think there are some essential ingredients that I see in every successful program, and I'll start with the top ingredient. You need to have leadership buy-in. You need to have somebody either at the top or close to the top who's a champion of this. That means they're going to be able to push things through to get approved or find you money if you need it. You don't really need money. None of our services cost anything, so that's always good for people to know. We're fully funded. I'm a state employee. Almost everything we do, you don't have to pay for it. Even the naloxone boxes, which are like $300, we give those away for free, and we give a Narcan away for free. So, why an employer is not taking advantage of us beats me. So give me a call. Yeah. So that answer your question.
Jeff, you would fit in this office so well.
Oh my God! What was the question again?
I was asking how can employers create a supportive culture?
Got it. Okay, so leadership buy-in, that's essential. I think you have to listen, like going back to that employee survey, which again, it can only be 5 questions. It doesn't have to be this exhaustive thing. But I think asking employees is a really important step and I almost try to build it in every time someone calls and says, will you work with us? Let's do an employee survey. I get some pushback on that because sometimes they just don't want to know. But I think it's important. But if you ever do an employee survey, you better do something with the information,
Mhm.
as you know, the employees are going to be like, oh, what did I fill out that crap for? And I don't see anything, you know?
Right.
So I think that's important. There's a thing called employee resource groups, which has been around a long time, ERGs. It actually was started by in the 1960s, which is by a black executive of IBM, an employee of color who did not feel as if the employees of color at IBM were getting or focusing their energies on the problems that were affecting them. So this gentleman, I can't remember his name, he started calling it employee resource group, and that's what they are. Employee resource groups are affinity groups within organizations that talk and think and try to solve problems related to that group. So I would put together an ERG for mental health, substance use, and trauma, you know. So these are employee-based groups that meet, you know, from time to time and say, how are we doing? And they give feedback to, or they execute. So those are important. So surveys, leadership buy-in, employee resource groups. I try to help employers avoid mistakes. Like awareness campaigns can be a huge mistake. If all you're doing is out there putting posters, we did this at my last employer. I was there for almost 10 years, and we went through the George Floyd murder time period. And like every CEO in the country did the same thing. They wrote a letter to their employees talking about how they felt about racism and how they wanted the company to be, which is an appropriate political, social step. I get that as a CEO. I would have wrote a letter too. But then our CEO said, we're going to embark on an aggressive DEI program. And almost no one understood what DEI was. DEI is its own animal, you know, with people that had expertise in it, you know, because you're about to embark on having conversations with white employees and employees of color, and you're going to be talking about the company's problems. So in our leadership meeting, which was about 25 leaders, I was the only guy that raised his hand and said, we should not do this, which is not a good look for a middle-aged white guy to say, let's not try to solve our racism problem here. But I was, but I took a lot of crap for it. But no one understood what I was trying to say, which was we're not equipped to do it, is what I was trying to say. I said, I think we should do it. We should be thoughtful about it. We should reach out to experts, and we should, you know, and we should make sure that we're not going to announce that we're going to do it until we're actually going to do it. And that's exactly what we did do. We told everybody that we're going to be doing this thing. And we hired a DEI executive. And after 6 months, that person resigned because nothing was being done. Because no one would do anything. Me included. I stayed away from, I stayed as far away from as I could, because I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to walk into that mess.
Right.
So the same thing with mental health. Make sure you know what you're doing. If you start talking about it, I'd rather have you not talk about anything than talk about it and then nothing happens. Like, we're going to do this stuff. And then like, okay, well, what stuff?
Right. Right. Where was that stuff? Yeah. Any future goals? You told us that you added caretaker provision.
Yeah.
Any other things that you're thinking about adding?
I'm trying to get the current member. I mean, obviously, I'm building members. That's how I'm measured in this job. So bringing on new certified members. I'm also trying to deepen the engagement with existing members. I think, these days, as you guys know, like everybody else, there's so much demands on your time and energy, like the currency today is attention. That's all the currency is today. So trying to get people to focus on one thing for a sustained period of time is very difficult. So, you're talking to a paving company or a construction company, and I'm trying to get them to think about mental health, or, it's hard to get them to stay focused on that for any serious length of time before they get distracted about, oh, we need to talk about that building that we're putting up, or this or that. So it's always a challenge to get people to stay focused on what I want them to stay focused on, what I think is important. So that's a challenge. Yeah. So that's a goal. In terms of my overall job, also as a program liaison for recovery housing, my other goal is to increase the number of recovery houses we have in the state, which means we increase the number of beds. Currently, we have a waiting list for people to get into a recovery house. That's something I am striving to eliminate. I think I can do it this year. So,
Jeff,
Wow.
I would have a colleague here that would be upset if I didn't ask, what about women's beds? We've heard that there's really not a lot of women's beds out there.
well, all we can do as a state entity that is we put out an RFP, right? Request for proposal. And I have one that I just wrote and put out, closed on Monday. We have potential applicants. All I can do to influence what types of beds I want, and I do want women's beds. You're correct about that. All I can do is I can put that information into the RFP, and I can weigh the RFP to favor that type of application.
Mhm.
I can say we are giving more points, if you will, scoring points for the application for organizations that are applying for women's only recovery housing.
Mm.
So that's what we can do.
Yeah.
Can't go out there and, force people into opening a woman's house. We can only write a good RFP and incentivize applicants to provide us with those types of houses. So the other challenge is we need to look at the houses. Right now, there's what's called level 1, 2, 3, and 4 houses in Rhode Island. That's how recovery houses are classified as. We don't have any level 1s. That's a social model, and that's not something we do. We have levels 2 and level 3s and level 4s. Level 2s are pretty much unsupervised houses. There's a house manager there that gets usually a reduction in their rent, but no paid staff. Usually that means someone coming into that house has what we call a lot of recovery capital. You guys know what that term means?
No.
Mhm.
Like recovery I'm a person in recovery. My recovery capital is I have family and friends. I have a network of people that can help me. I got money in the bank. I got a job. I got a primary care physician. I got a regular appointment with a therapist. I got a recovery program. So there's my recovery capital.
Okay.
Your protective factors is what we call it in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
business. Yep.
So recovery capital is important. It's a great model to look at in terms of how you are helping people, how you can measure what you're doing and how people are getting better or not. I have housing, for instance, that's huge. Transportation, recovery capital. And for a guy like me, I had it easy getting into recovery, comparatively speaking. I come from a family with means. So, I had to do the hard work of addiction and mental health, but I did have a lot of recovery capital all the time.
Mhm.
Level 3 house is different. Level 3 house is there's a mandate in our contract that this house has to have a staff person there 20 hours or more a week, a certified peer recovery specialist, CPRS. That person's job is to do some case management and housing navigation. So if someone comes in there like, I don't know anybody around here, I got nothing. Okay, let me find you meetings. Let's get you a doctor's appointment. Get you kind of a physical. Let's find you a therapist. So that's a level 3. Level 4 is kind of like a more of a clinical model with this clinical staff on site providing services. It's like a step down from a treatment center. Maybe you're leaving the treatment center. You're not really ready yet medically or clinically to kind of be handling your own stuff. So you go to a level 4 for a month and a half, and then you step down to level 3 or 2. That makes sense?
Yes.
Makes sense.
A lot of people don't know that, which is why I take a few minutes to explain it. I think people that think about recovery housing just think about recovery housing. It's like one giant thing.
Right.
Yes.
It's not. It's different things. So
Now, for our listeners and viewers, and how would they get in touch with you? How would they schedule you to come in and take a look at their?
I'm gonna write this down.
I would go to the website recoveryfriendly.ri.gov. Recoveryfriendly.ri.gov. Start there. Look at what's going on in the website. Yeah, makes sense. Sounds good. And then just fill out the contact form, which comes right to me, and I'll reach out. It's pretty simple. I'll come out and sit down with you for 20 minutes. That's all I need. And after 20 minutes, you don't think this is a good idea, that's fine. At least you know it's out there. But I think most people like, yeah, this makes sense. Let's do this. And then we'll start doing some assessment of your company. So we give you a sense of where you're at. So we have a foundational starting point so we can grow together. I feel very confident saying this, that for any business that reaches out to me and we start this relationship, you're going to be in a better place next year.
Awesome.
I firmly believe that if you follow my advice and the practices and you try a little hard, and it's not disruptive to your organization, you're going to have employees who really thank you for doing that. You're going to have employees who are feeling and doing better. I feel like that's a safe commitment from me. So
That is great.
This is great. We did nothing to do with recovery, but we did a walking club last month. We had never
Cool.
done anything like that before. And everyone was like, let's do something else. No one's offered any suggestions like they were supposed to, but everybody liked the buy-in to their health and to their, it gave them 15 minutes of
Yep.
time to clear their head and stuff. So it was very well received, and it was just 15 minutes of walking. Like, no
Yeah,
big.
we do stuff like that. We do stuff like that here at BHDDH. My team gets that. Well, we have two things. We have my team that's always coming up with fun ideas, and then we actually have a fun committee.
At
Wow.
BHDH.
We do. I know we're not fun people. People don't. No, people look at us and they're like, "Oh my God, those steely cold eyes." But there's a lot. I'll tell you something. As I've never worked in the state before, and I live in Massachusetts, so I'm not a native Rhode Islander. I don't know everybody like everybody does when they live here. I've worked at some high level jobs in my life. My last job was pretty high level. I've never worked with a more talented, hardworking group of people in my life. Who, when I got this job, my friends were like, "Man, you nailed it. State job, 35 hours a week, cushy, woo woo." I've never been pushed as hard in my life to up my game than I have in this job.
Wow.
And what's really awesome is when I'm sitting in meetings where I'm like, I said to myself, sooner or later, I'm going to see the cynicism of government. I'm going to see like the whatever attitude. Nope. In every meeting that I'm in, when we're talking about recovery housing or funding a recovery community center or trying to get money for this group or that group or the homeless or whatever, I hear a group of people trying to figure it out to help the citizens of Rhode Island. But we're constrained, if anything, by the nature of government, which is generally slow and procedural and with a lot of checks and balances. So if there's a perception of us being difficult, it's not the people's souls, perhaps. It's the system in which we're trying to work through that gives us that pressure.
Now, if there's one thing that people could take away from this podcast, what would you want that one message to be?
I would want. I'll leave on the. Yeah, that's finally, and I'll ask a great question. I'm a person with lived experience. My lived experience is I struggle with depression and suicide ideation on a regular basis, weekly basis. I think about taking my life. Now that shocks people when I say that during a keynote speech, because they look at me like, you got a great job and you're healthy and your family, right? I know all that's true. I have no idea why I think like that. It is problematic and causes me great, mental struggle sometimes dealing with that. But I say it because I don't think necessarily anybody would think that about me, right?
Right.
And I want you to know I'm sitting next to you in the office. So if I can be sitting next to you in the office and I'm contemplating going home tonight and taking my life, what else is going on in the office? I would want people to walk away from the fact that we're all very human people and that your office, your business is full of human beings who are coming to work, trying to do their best, but also navigating the difficulties of modern life, which is mental health, substance use, trauma, and caregiving, and if having a little compassion, having a little understanding for an employee, and if you're a leader, saying to yourself, are we doing enough really to take care of these people? Because they come here every day, they sit down, they put in their 8 hours, and I want them to feel like they're in a safe place to do that.
Wow. What an eye-opening conclusion.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Wow.
It was great to meet you, Jeff. I think you're my
Yeah.
favorite BHDDH person. Don't tell the people in the other departments.
Yeah, I know, I've been out there enough now. I know how people feel about us, good and bad. And like I said, I think it really, what people don't understand unless they work here is everybody has the same good intention. It's just, you know, there are people that don't like me. It's because of decisions I've had to make based on being an employee of the government. It's nothing I can do.
Wow. This has been great. Thank you very much, Jeff. You've been wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great host. I really am glad I did this. I woke up this morning, I saw it on my calendar, I was like, feeling a little tired. I was like, oh, but I was now I feel energized, and I'm talking about what I love, and it was great to meet you both. So take care.
Maybe
Thank
you take
you.
care.